Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Stephen and Keith both sent me a story out of Texas, and Steve checked this story out about a man and his truck. And it's from On Your Side, which is a news segment from Fox 4 News. Website's fox4news.com. Hey, that's my truck. Hey, that's my truck. Steve Noviello wrote the story. And this is an interesting one. And it's not over yet, but we'll see what happens. Blake Headley of Hearst was sure he found the perfect truck for his fence building business. It was a Ford F-250. He paid $7,500 in cash for it and then sunk another $2,500 into it in upgrades. And then he was driving it for a little over a year. He got pulled over. Police officer says, in essence, do you know why I pulled you over? No. Well, the truck you're driving is stolen. We have to impound it. The truck you're driving is stolen. So that's weird. But what Headley didn't realize was that years before he bought the truck, it had been taken on a test drive from a used car lot and never returned, and then it was reported missing, which of course is stolen in this purpose, okay? So the vehicle was stolen from a used car lot years ago. A Fort Worth PD spokesperson says it should have been changed to stolen vehicle in the system because he never returned the vehicle. But apparently it was listed as a missing vehicle for a little while, and then somewhere along the line it got changed to stolen. It would take the agency 5 months to enter the truck into the stolen vehicle database. Meanwhile, it was recovered in another city 2 days later, impounded, but went unclaimed. So there is some issue there, but it was sitting in an impound yard and it was unclaimed. So a woman with the AA Wrecker Service was in charge of contacting the registered owners, and she recalls there was no possible way to know that it was in a dealer's possession. She says the car lot from which it was taken never registered their ownership interest, so they didn't know to contact them. So the true owner of the vehicle was the used car lot. But when a used car lot puts a car into their inventory, they don't transfer the title into their own name. And if you've ever bought a used car from a dealership, you know this. They can take the title from the previous owner and sign it over, in essence, to you. And then they apply for a title in your name. But the dealership doesn't appear as a titled owner in most states. So they hadn't registered their ownership. So all they could tell was who owned it, in essence, before the dealership, and apparently they didn't respond or give the information. So after sitting in the impound yard for 90 days, the vehicle was taken to an auction and sold. And per Texas law, when an auction sales receipt is issued, it supersedes any pre-existing title or lien. That is true, as far as I know, almost everywhere. So if something gets auctioned off through some kind of judicial process, like if it's a sheriff's auction or one of these impound auctions, that title becomes good, okay? So that means that the new owner gets a new clean title. That buyer was who sold the truck to Headley. So the title that Headley's got should be good because it originates from an impound auction. Fort Worth police have since changed their policy and add all missing or stolen vehicles into a database the day they're reported. But here's the problem for Headley. A Fort Worth municipal judge has now ordered the truck returned not to Headley or to the party from which he purchased it, but to the used car lot it was stolen from back at the beginning of the story, at least chronologically. So he is now appealing that decision. And Fox 4 News asked the owner of the car lot if he had any insurance to cover when the truck was stolen. He says he did not. He says he plans to bring the truck to auction and sell it. And if that happens, and Headley wins his appeal, he'll be awarded fair market value. So the question is there any relief if he doesn't? Well, the man who sold the truck to Headley says someone's got to do the right thing. So he has offered to refund Headley the $7,500 he paid to get the truck in the first place. And Fox 4 says they'll update the story. But the interesting thing here is that, again, we've got someone who sold a vehicle and the person they sold to had issues with it, and they're willing to make it good, which is pretty cool. That's pretty cool they're going to do that. But here's the bigger issue. That municipal court judge who has ordered the truck returned to the party that it was stolen from eons ago. I don't know how the jurisdictional issues work in Texas with respect to municipal judges, But I know that in Michigan, the lower court judges are district courts and the upper courts are circuit courts. A district court judge, generally speaking, cannot do equity, ordering things to be done. They can pretty much just hand the money out. You pay them, that kind of thing. But bigger question is, why does a municipal court judge not honor the auction that this thing went through pursuant to the law? And now, if there was a problem with the auction, like the auction wasn't advertised properly, or they sold it to the wrong person, like they cut a deal with somebody, we've heard of that before, where somebody allegedly holds a public auction and only one person shows up and buys everything at rock bottom prices. And later on, you find out the auction wasn't advertised properly because the law says it's got to be a commercially reasonable auction, and they'll have definitions for that in almost every state, and it'll say you must do certain things. So I know that in Michigan, for instance, they've got to post public notices in certain places. And a lot of times back in the days of classified ads, remember those? You used to be able to go through the classified ads and they list auctions. And it actually say things like the 34th District Court is holding an auction, or an auction will be held at the 34th District Court in the parking lot of items involved in a particular case. And a sheriff may have seized a bunch of stuff pursuant to writ of execution, and they bring it to the parking lot and they sell it off right there. And I actually knew a guy who was a sheriff deputy who did auctions like that. And he had a couple courts that he'd worked out deals with where they let him do that. And they'd actually say, on a day that we're not busy, you can go over to the corner of the parking lot here and auction stuff off. And so he'd bring along a couple vehicles and some other stuff that he grabbed that he knew he could sell. And they hold an auction, they advertise it, people show up, the guy holds an auction. And there is case law in Michigan explicitly stating that something that passes through a sheriff's auction cannot be undone in the sense of saying, oh, we're going to undo that auction, give it back to the person over here. And if they allowed that, the courts would be bogged down with people who were upset that their stuff got auctioned off. So I've actually dealt with that before. Some of you might know which series of videos I'm talking about. But in this case, it's kind of complicated because the guy bought the truck and later he's told it was stolen. And it's being returned back to the person it was stolen from, despite the fact that it went through this whole process where somewhere in the middle, it was auctioned off pursuant to an impound charge. And I'm willing to bet you that the impound charge in Texas is probably similar to a sheriff's auction in terms of how much you can do to undo what happened there. So the good news is that the guy who sold the truck said he'll make it good. That's cool. But bigger question is, curiously, are there any attorneys in Texas in my audience? And could you please let me know whether a Fort Worth municipal judge has the authority to order a vehicle returned to its original owner if, after it was stolen, it went through an impound yard auction for unpaid storage fees and lay unclaimed for 90 days? That's the question I have. So if anybody in Texas who's an attorney has the answer for that, please let me know. But it's an interesting story because it involves all kinds of crazy stuff we like to talk about on this channel. Love them crazy stories you guys send me. Stephen with a PH sent it along with Keith. Stephen and Keith. On your side, hey, that's my truck. Steve Noviello wrote it for fox4news.com. On your side, Fox 4. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I haven't been everywhere, but it's on my list.